The idea of asking your boss for a pay rise in English can be very stressful, but don't worry, because by the end of this lesson, you'll have key steps and strategies and lots of useful phrases so you can confidently ask for a salary increase in English at work. Hi there, I'm Derek and this is English for Professionals, the best place to improve your professional English communication skills for work. Before we get started with the lesson, I just want to tell you about my Professional English Phrase Booster. It contains over 300 phrases to help you with meetings, presentations, emails, phrasal verbs, and much more. It's completely free for you to download, and you'll find a link in the description below. I'm also including a separate PDF guide with all of the tips, strategies, and phrases from this lesson. You'll also find that link in the description below. And now, let's get started with the lesson. Before you go into a meeting with your boss to ask for a pay rise, it's important to follow these steps to increase your chances of a positive outcome and getting that yes. Preparation is absolutely key. Here are my top tips. First of all, do your research. Before going into the conversation, know the market rate for your position and experience level. This research helps you to know what others in a similar role earn, making sure you negotiate for a fair salary. Another important tip is to prepare your case. Take some time to sit down and think about your achievements and contributions to the company. This helps you to explain your value, giving you a higher chance of having a successful negotiation. You should gather specific examples of what you've done to help the company succeed. The more specific, the better. Moving on to tip number 3, choose the right time. Choosing the right time is important because it makes sure your boss is open and ready to listen to your request. For example, avoid asking during a busy period or when your boss is stressed. Instead, choose a calm moment when they have time to discuss. And when it comes to the actual meeting, be professional. Stay calm and professional throughout the discussion. This shows respect for your boss and company, making your conversation more likely to be taken seriously. This is going to help maintain a positive relationship with your boss, regardless of whether they offer you the pay rise or not. And finally, be ready for questions. Anticipate questions that your boss may ask you and be ready to provide answers. Your boss might ask you about your accomplishments, why you think you deserve a pay rise, and how you came up with your desired salary. Be prepared with clear, honest answers that show you've carefully thought through your proposal. Great, so those are my tips on getting prepared for the meeting. Now let's look at the actual steps involved. So first of all, you need to request the meeting. Ask your boss for a time when you can both sit down and discuss this topic. Then when the meeting actually takes place, the first thing you're going to do is present your case. Then there'll probably be discussion and negotiation, and then the meeting will close, hopefully with a positive outcome for you. Now let's go ahead and look at some useful phrases you can use at each step. We're going to look at some formal phrases and some less formal phrases. But first of all, when should we use formal language and when is it more appropriate to use a less formal style? Use formal language when the company culture is traditional and your relationship with your boss is strictly professional. Choose less formal language in less traditional or startup environments, or when you have a more friendly and open relationship with your boss. And now let's start with the first step, requesting the meeting. Most of the time, it makes sense to send a request for a meeting to discuss a possible pay rise per email. And I'll show you some examples of how to do that later in the lesson. But sometimes, depending on the relationship with your boss, you may request a meeting verbally. Here are some examples for how you can do that. By the way, do you have a moment to chat about my salary this week? So in this example, imagine you're talking to your boss about something else and you feel it's a good time to request the meeting. Use "by the way" to signal a change of subject and then make the request. While I have you, can we talk about my pay sometime in the next week or two? "While I have you" is a nice informal phrase to let someone know that you have something else you'd like to discuss before your conversation ends. I'm not going to share any formal phrases for requesting a meeting verbally, because if your relationship with your boss is more formal, then I would always request the meeting per email. Great, now let's look at some phrases to use in the actual meeting, and we'll start with presenting your case. Formal. I've been with the company for, and then say how long you've been with the company, and I believe my contributions have significantly impacted our team's success. For example, and then mention specific contributions and accomplishments. As I said before, the more specific, the better. Considering my recent achievements, such as, and then mention your specific accomplishments, achievements, I believe a review of my salary is fair. I've been here for, and I think my work has really helped our team. For example, or I've done a lot lately, like, and think it's a good time to talk about my pay. Okay, so you've presented your case with your specific achievements and accomplishments. Now it's time for discussion and negotiation. And because this part of the meeting will probably take up the most time, I've broken it down into 3 different sections for you. The first section is when you actually ask for the increase. Based on my research, the market rate for my role is between amount A and B, and I would like to discuss adjusting my salary to reflect this. Or, I'm seeking a, and then the percentage or amount, increase, which I believe is fair given my performance and current market conditions. From what I've seen, people in my role make between amount A and B. Can we talk about bringing my salary up to that level? Or, I think a percentage or amount rise is fair considering what I've been doing and what others at my level are making. It's very common for your boss not to agree to a pay rise straight away. They may have some objections. So here are some phrases for responding to objections. A common objection could be budget constraints, so basically not having enough financial resources to pay people more. I understand budget constraints are a concern, but I believe my contributions and the market data justify a salary review. Or, I appreciate your perspective. However, considering my consistent performance and increased responsibilities, I'd appreciate it if we could explore other options for compensation. I get that budgets are tight, but I've been working really hard and I think it's only fair to look at my pay. Or, I see where you're coming from, but given all I've been doing, I'd appreciate it if we could find a way to make this work. It can also be the case that you're offered less than you were hoping for, less than you feel you deserve. Let's take a look at some phrases for dealing with this situation. I appreciate the offer, but I was hoping for an increase closer to X amount based on my research and contributions. Is there room for further discussion? Thank you for the offer. Given my role and market standards, could we discuss a middle ground that reflects my performance? Thanks for the offer. I was hoping for something closer to amount or percentage. Can we discuss that? Or, I appreciate the offer, but I think my work justifies a bit more. Can we find a compromise? Now let's look at some different phrases for closing the meeting. There are several different ways to do this depending on the outcome. If your boss needs more time to make a decision. I understand you need time to consider my request. Could we set up a follow-up meeting in the next 2 weeks to revisit this discussion? Or, thank you for your consideration. In the meantime, can we establish a timeline for when this topic can be revisited? I get that you need some time to think about this. Can we plan to talk again in a couple of weeks? Or, thanks for considering it. Can we set a date to follow up in the next week or 2? An offer has been made, but you want to consider it. Thank you for the offer. I'd like to take some time to consider it and we'll get back to you soon. Or, I appreciate your offer and the discussion today. Could I have a few days to think it over? Thanks for the offer. I'd like to think it over and get back to you soon. Or, I appreciate the offer. Can I take a few days to consider it and then we can touch base? How to close the conversation when your request is denied, so when you get a no. Thank you for considering my request. Could we revisit this discussion in a few months? Or, I appreciate your time and the feedback. I understand the constraints and hope we can discuss this again in the future. I get it. Thanks for considering it. Can we talk about this again in a few months? Or, thanks for the feedback. I understand and hope we can revisit this topic down the road. How to close the meeting when an offer has been made and you are satisfied. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate your recognition of my hard work and contributions to the team. Or, I appreciate your time and consideration. I'm delighted we could agree on a fair adjustment and I look forward to continuing my work. Thanks very much. I think that's fair and I'm happy to accept. Or, thanks for the increase. It means a lot to know that my work is valued. Excellent. So hopefully those last phrases will be the ones you'll be using. Now, earlier in the lesson, I told you that I was going to share some examples of how to make the request per email, the meeting request. So I'm going to show you now a formal example and a less formal example. I'll leave them on the screen for a few seconds, and they are also included in the free PDF guide that comes with this lesson. I hope you found this lesson helpful and I really hope it helps you to get the pay rise you deserve. If it does, come back and leave a comment and let us know. And don't forget to give this lesson a thumbs up and watch one of these next.